Talk to me then about you then, your life. Where were you born?
I was born in Northern Ireland, actually. My parents came from Estonia, and then they went to Northern Ireland, and I guess they wanted me to suffer as much as they had by taking me there, but I loved my years in Northern Ireland. I've still got a massive affinity with Belfast. Belfast and Newcastle upon Tyne are my two favourite cities.
I'm a Geordie.
I know that, yeah.
Oh.
Those are the two cities, and they've got a similar atmosphere. So I went there, went to a state school, but it was a grammar school. And it certainly worked well for me. It didn't work well for my brother. He just didn't fit into that institutionalised approach, but it worked for me. And so I grew up there, and I had a fantastic time there. I was watching a series called The Fall, and it's based in Northern Ireland, and last night I saw a scene where my old school was in the background. You don't often see that. So I spent 18 years there, and then I moved to Bristol to go to university there.
Bristol's beautiful. It's a really nice place to go, actually. Were you a good student? What did you get in your A-levels and things? What degree did you do?
I was a poor student.
Were you?
But I was lucky because I was able to cram really fast. I remember one time I was redoing my exam sort of plan, not the actual exams, I was just rewriting my study plan, and my father said, look, sooner or later, even the best strategy has to degenerate into action. And I got through. I got an A, B, C, D. In my 4 exams.
It's not bad. It goes A, B, C, D.
A for economics, B for maths, C for physics, and D for ancient history.
I bet no one's ever asked you what grades you got ever in work, ever.
No, nobody.
I thought
no
so.
one has ever asked me. You don't need any qualifications to be an MP at all, which may explain quite a lot.
Well, that would explain a lot, yeah,
But
to be fair.
I went to university and it became even worse. I started off in aeronautical engineering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it didn't last there. Went to economics, did a year of economics, and then I changed again to philosophy.
Oh, I was going to study philosophy and theology, but
really?
in the end I went for business.
Why didn't you go for... that's very different. Why didn't you go for philosophy?
Because I could do that, and I thought, let's do something that would actually be useful.
Ah, but philosophy's...
Well, it is.
How dare you?
Well, there you go. There you go, Lembit.
It teaches you how to think.
Well, no, I actually studied philosophy and theology at school as well, at O-level, OA-level and A-level. So it wasn't just suddenly, I just thought, you know, I've got this down.
Your school was definitely posher than mine. We didn't have the option there. But I did do philosophy, loved it. Didn't actually expect it to be career significant, because there aren't many philosophy jobs in the world. But for me, it taught me how to think. But then I did other things. I became president of the University Students' Union. Probably was actually as important as my degree. Then I went to, as a result, I actually did do quite well in terms of my first job. I went into a very big job in marketing.
Really? How big was it? What were you?
Well, you've called me out now because it doesn't sound so impressive when I describe the details. But at the age of 23, I went and worked for Fairy Liquid, which is Britain's favourite washing up liquid.
Yeah.
And I was the brand assistant on that. I suppose it was a big job. I was responsible for a $12 million...
That's a big account.
Well, yeah, $12 million budget I was responsible for. I made one calculating error once, which nearly cost them a couple of million.
Really?
I
what
fixed
was that?
it.
Go on, talk to me.
I put an extra couple of noughts onto some coupons, those 10p off coupons, and we nearly sent these coupons to every household in the whole of Britain instead of a small test market. We had to burn them. So I reduced the potential cost down to 60 grand. That's what it cost to burn them. But actually, if we had sent them to everyone, the business would have boomed because the test worked. But that was big responsibility when I was 23. Yes, and then I became assistant brand manager. But my best job in Procter & Gamble was about people, perhaps a portent for what I did after in politics. I became the global human resources training and development manager. Big job, around the world. 120,000 people to train. I loved that, Nana.
Yeah,
I loved that job.
Imagine you'd be good at that. I once was head of human empowerment, but I didn't do anything. So people used to call me head of human impalement, actually, because I didn't do anything. I don't know what I did. So you got the... How did you get into politics from all of that, then? Because you're training people now, you're going around the world. How do you end up as an MP?
Being president of the University Students' Union was a big job, full-time, took a year out to do it. I think I did okay. Then I got into the National Union of Students, and I did that for a year, and there was runner-up. The only person ever to be runner-up for the president of the NUS, 2 years in a row. And then I bowed out of that, but it was really very good training. And I guess the truth is, now my whole family's life has been, in a way, totally dysfunctional because of politics, in a way, because they had to leave Estonia. Members of my family didn't get out. They were killed for ideological reasons there. And I think there's a certain melancholy. This is kind of sad, but it's true. that's lived from generation to generation in my life, in my family's life, I mean. And so somewhere inside me, I want to put things right. And it's got to be back to those melancholy days for my family just after the war and everything else. And that was a driver. And then I was involved in a really well-paid job in Procter & Gamble. So it wasn't a financial motivation, but I became a councillor. I could see the way things weren't working. I joined the Lib Dems at a time when it was at 3% in the opinion polls.
I was going to say, if you wanted to fix things, why did you join them? They
because
never win.
I was persuaded by Paddy Ashton. I met him.
Really? Yes.
A friend of mine called Ben Rich saw that I was thinking about going in. And I met Paddy Ashton, spent a morning with him. He was mesmerisingly charismatic. There's only one other politician I've met that was comparable to him in terms of charisma, and that was Benazir Bhutto. And they both had the same quality, effervescent, persuasive charm and charisma. And so I thought, I can actually do something with this party. They were at 3% in the polls when I joined them, famously with a statistical variation of plus or minus 4%, so they kind of didn't exist. But I knew it was the right thing for me. I'm an intense libertarian. At that time, the Lib Dems really believed in freedom, and I'm not sure they do now. Maybe we'll talk about that. And then I helped to build the party. I was one of maybe half a dozen people who made the party electable. And then in '97, I was still working for Procter & Gamble. I got elected and left a job I love for, I suppose, what I felt was my duty in a way.
And when you left that job and got into the Liberal Democrats, did you actually enjoy what you were doing, or did you feel you'd made a huge mistake?
No, I did really enjoy it. I loved working in P&G and Procter & Gamble. I loved that job. They gave me a lot of freedom. I was going around the world. I was living the dream. Sitting there in business class, 4-star hotels in places like Guangzhou.
But on your own, though, it sounds good, but...
I worked with other people, but it was before you really had these big social networks. So I had a global network, but I did it by meeting and visiting people. I was going to Cincinnati in America every month, and it was just an incredible thing. I flew on Concorde twice.
Really?
Oh, and it was so cool.
Wow.
And so I really loved that, but then I went into politics because I was persuaded to stand because I was so senior in the Lib Dems already, and I got into a seat at the last minute, really. Didn't expect to become an MP then, and then got elected. Was it a mistake? No, it wasn't, because I did make some very big changes. A few things that were really important as an MP.
What's the thing that you're most proud of that you changed?
The Northern Ireland peace process, there's no doubt about it.
What was your part in it?
Mo Mowlam is another giant to me in terms of somebody who I really respected. She was the Labour Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and she did it in her own way. She's the one who started talking to terrorists because she treated them as people. And I got on well with her, and I suppose I can say now, I was the go-between for some of those core meetings at the beginning. She couldn't do them because if they failed, that would damage the government. I could do them because if it failed, it didn't matter. It was just Opik from the Lib Dems who got it wrong. So I set up some of the first meetings, the first meeting between a very senior loyalist Protestant in the north of Ireland with the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of the south of Ireland. I brokered that. And then I worked with the loyalist side, the way she was working with the IRA and the other side, to try to bring them to the table. How big was my influence? 5, maybe 8%. I don't want to exaggerate it, but still, that's a big change. So, in my own small way, I was one of the people who helped to get peace there. You save lives, you make a difference to where you grew up. That was huge. And then the other side, less glamorous, is what I did in my constituency, and important things for individuals. But the big thing was that.
So what happened then? How did it all go wrong? You left the Liberal Democrats.
They left me.
Well, yes, either way.
Well, I'm not really sure if I have. I'm not sure if I'm a member or not.
I don't think you are.
You've checked that?
Well, from what I've read, no.
Yeah, well, from what I've read too. But I checked my post and I'm not sure.
That happens here all the time as well. We find out people are leaving just by reading the papers.
Yeah. I'll just say to the Lib Dems, I think you've got some misunderstanding going on here. Give me a call, but not just now. I'm a little bit busy. The reality here is that it started to go wrong in 2010 when I lost my seat. We maybe talk about, you'll have to ask, but I will answer honestly about what caused that.
Well, go on.
All right. No. I'm just setting a trap for myself.
Well, you did your own trap there. I was going to... You go for it.
In 2005, I had the biggest majority in the history of my constituency. Looked like safe as houses. The Lib Dems were doing well. I was leader of the Liberal Democrats in Wales, and I doubled the number under my leadership. I didn't do it. I was under my leadership that had happened. We doubled the number of MPs. We had 6 assembly members, record number of councillors. It was all looking great. then I somehow, between 2005 and 2010, fell out with the leadership. I had no faith in Nick Clegg's leadership. I actually could see he, in my view, didn't have anything like the narrative I joined the party to support. And so I was on the outside looking in then, in that sense. And I was becoming a bit lonely in terms of the whole process of politics. I promised myself I'd only stand in 2010 and leave in 2015. But then here's the naivety. I thought that people would see my political work and the things I did, which were personal, as separate things, but they didn't.
Oh, no, that never happens.
It was naive. That's one reason any time I'm in GBNews, I'm always defending people like Matt Hancock and other people, because you can't see it when you're on the inside. You think people will make the distinction. And so then I had various relationships, and one which very publicly failed, and that former partner decided to go on a mission to really try to...
Is this didn't you go out with one of the cheeky girls?
I did, yeah, but it wasn't her. I went out with someone before her, Sean Lloyd, the weather girl. She wrote a book about me. She finished with me, but it looked like I'd finished with her. And there was this whole story about me leaving Sean Lloyd for the cheeky girl, for Gabriella Iramia. She has a real name too. And it was libelous, actually, because it made it look like it was the other way around. And Sean Lloyd even, once this got completely out of control, I remember called, I think it was Loose Women or some, it may not been that show, but some other show saying, no, I left Lembit. She actually wrote a book about it, but it's not as good a story.
But in the book, surely it would have made it clear. Yeah. So why was everyone saying that? Because
it's a much better story to say that Lembit leaves a weather girl for a cheeky girl, and then she got the sympathy vote and everything else as well. I wasn't then litigious, much more litigious now, but then I wasn't, and I just thought people could see the difference, and I would guess, I can't prove this, but that was a core factor why I lost. But then there was something else, Nana. My seat was a bellwether seat where in 1979, when the then sitting MP, the late Emlyn Hewson, was a Liberal, he lost to a Conservative just because of what happened in politics. And then he lost his seat in a similar way. So sometimes that seat's been lost for other reasons. But one thing I tell you, Nana, when something happens on your watch, good or bad, you just have to take the credit or the blame. So I take the blame, and I lost. So that's when my political career ended abruptly and without planning. And you go from hero to zero financially and as a politician in 5 minutes. And the guy who beat me, Glyn Davis, he's a friend. You know, he won fair and square. Didn't like some of his political methodology. But you know what? He didn't do anything wrong, really. I did, probably. I could have won it, but I didn't. Then I went into the wilderness. It really is like wilderness, because suddenly you are persona non grata. You're the guy who lost a safe seat. And it hurts, and it really hurts. Then on top of that, didn't have any meaningful income. And then some other things which happened, which I only recently found out, other people had, or institutions had actually messed up my finances a bit, and I didn't know it. So I ended up pretty much insolvent, stressed with that, unable to find decent work. And then with this hate campaign going against me in the Lib Dems, I'm being ritually slaughtered in every discussion by people saying, you lost a safe seat, you're no good, because they took the, oh, you shouldn't have had those relationships line, which isn't very liberal in my view, but that's what was said. In one way or another, that was what was suggested. And then I was on my own, and it's lonely, and it's quiet, and you begin to doubt yourself. Darkest time, Nana, around 2012, where I was close to just giving everything up. And I can't put it in more words than this. I had people coming around talking about house repossession. I had no real sense of community with the Lib Dems, because every time I met them, they were blaming me. And also, the press was still having a field day, because they knew at that time I wasn't litigious. I was on my own. And that's when it started going wrong. And then eventually, you have to reinvent yourself. And that's hard, Nana, when you just think there's nowhere to go. No one respects you. And if you corrosively get that negativity for 4 or 5 years, you do begin to believe it. And that happened to me.
So where are you now, then? How did you get out of that? Because you seem to be doing lots of things. You've been on Question Time, Have I Got News for You, all sorts of things. What's been...
Yeah, I did Question Time about 14 times, and that was when I was an MP. I'd love to do it again, maybe in my new reinvented role, whatever that may seem. What happened is I made a choice. I was with a friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine, Alex Best, George Best's widow, and we were both in a very similar situation, very dark time. And I remember saying to her one afternoon, it was a Wednesday afternoon, And I didn't have any work. I was sitting with her where she lived at the time. I said, we've just got to do something. And she's nodding. And I just think, yeah, we've both got to start doing something. And she's, in a different way, reinvented herself. She wasn't like in a bad place, really, but she's built herself up to a great place now. And I had to do it too, but I had a much bigger mountain to climb. So what did I do? Started thinking mindfully about myself and accepting that I wasn't going to get better by waiting for someone else to cure me. A very, very close friend of mine once said to me, bitterness is a pill you swallow yourself and you expect it to poison the other person. No, it just poisons you.
That's good.
And it's a very wise piece of advice that she gave me. So I thought, okay, where do I start? And I spoke to a guy called Steve Chalk, who runs the church that I go to. It's really quite an amazing place. It's Oasis, Waterloo Church. It's a church where you can be any religion. As long as you believe in anything, you're welcome. He just thinks it's a bigger mission. And he sat me down in a pub called the Three Stags, which is near where I lived at the time. He said, Lembit, you've got to find your narrative. You've got to find your, he said, teleology or telos. Work out what you're meant to be doing, and it's not this. And he's a lovely guy saying it. He told me that, and that was the turning point. And then very slowly I began to build things up. Little job here, bit of media there, job with the Motorcycle Action Group came along, because I'm a keen biker, Director of Communications, Public Affairs. Then it began to change. And then I began to believe in myself, and it got this virtuous circle. But you know, there's still days I think about those days, when it goes hard, when it goes tough. What do you really learn from all of this? I don't get to talk about this very much. No, I hope I'm not talking too much or too personally. But what you learn about it is that you've got to remember who you are, that you're just an ordinary person, whether you're on TV or somewhere else, and that you are what you make yourself. Not everyone has that luxury. Some people have really difficult problems that they can't fix. But someone like me can fix them. And I did. But I was so, so close to being on Skid Row. When I walk around London and I see people on the street, it could have been me. Literally. It could have been me. I could have lost my house. We were in those conversations. It could have been me never being in a studio again. It could have been me taking a really bad turn in personal decisions about how do I cope with it. And it could have been me just disappearing. And then whatever happened to Lembit Opik. And even that vanishes in the end. But it went the other way. Steve Chalk helped me. Some dear, dear friends helped me. My late mother never gave up on me, even when I nearly gave up on myself. That's heavy.
It was a bit, wasn't it? But it's great that you're here now to tell us that story. If you could give one pearl of wisdom that you've learned from this whole journey, what would that be?
That no one is as good or as bad as they're portrayed in the media. And for media, insert your friends, your enemies, your bank, your judges. No one is as good or as bad as they're made out by those people. And I suppose that the way I think about it is that actually life loves you. I've got a fairly strong faith, and without that faith I wouldn't have made it. But somehow, even if you're an atheist, there's something about our world which is invented for some purpose, and it's not so that you end up losing, which may be difficult if you're just looking at bankruptcy, or you've got a terribly difficult problem, you had an accident which has disabled you. I've been there. I broke my back in 1998. I've lost relationships I cared about. I lost my mum recently. But if you see it in the big picture, perhaps the miracle is being here at all in any condition. And so for me, I've got no right to complain, Nana, because all of that horrible darkness has reminded me to actually love life and what I've got. So my piece of advice is, no one's as good or as bad as they're made out, including yourself. You're probably not as good as you think if you're top of the world, and you're certainly not as bad as you think if you're at the bottom. Somewhere in between. And if you listen quietly to the voice in your head, it'll probably give you wisdom, even if your fears are shouting that voice down. That's all I got.
Lembit Opik, you are superb. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story.
It's
You
my
will go
pleasure.
from strength to strength, I can see that.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.